For the last part of the notes, we're going to be talking about the hinge theorem. The hinge theorem says that if two triangles have two sets of congruent sides and their included angles are not congruent, then the third sides of the triangles are not congruent. Remember, the included angles are the ones that those two sides make, the one that's between them. One's right here. So if these are different, then these sides are not equal. We also know that if S is bigger than B, then RT is greater than AC. So let's look down at our exercises. Let's compare MR and RP. We know that MN and PN are congruent. And we know that they have a shared side in RN. If RNM is bigger than RNP, then which of these segments is bigger? MR. This is the bigger angle, so this is the bigger segment. Let's try again. We're going to compare CD to DA. A lot of you will be tempted to rush because this one looks very visually obvious, but use the steps and fill in the blanks on your paper. We're given that BC is congruent to BA. We also know that DBA is bigger than DBC. DBA is the bigger angle. And again, we've got that shared side in DB, which is what allows us to use the hinge theorem. And once we know that, we can say that DA is greater than CD. The converse of the hinge theorem is that if two triangles have two sets of congruent sides and the third side of the triangle is not congruent, then the included angles are not congruent. So just like when we know the angles aren't the same, if we know the third side isn't the same, we know the angle. We know the angles aren't the same, we know the sides aren't the same. If we know the sides aren't the same, we know the angles aren't the same. So we're going to compare C and Z. First, we know that BC and YZ are congruent, and AC and XZ are congruent. We also know that XY is greater than AB. XY is 50, AB is only 48. So, which angle is bigger? The bigger angle is across from the longer side. Z is bigger than C. Now we're comparing R and T. R and T. So we've got our congruent sides, we've got our included angles that we don't know anything about, but we do know that the third sides are not congruent. So we know that RJ is congruent to KT. We know that RS is congruent to ST. And we know that KS is greater than JS. So we know that T is greater than angle R. And then this very last one, I'm going to do on the board in class, but for this one, I'm going to open up Notepad and kind of talk us through it. All right. So we've got a shared side. So that's one congruent side. We've got two sides that are 24. And then we've got one angle that's 115. And we've got one angle that's 120. So we know that this is going to be bigger than this one. So we know that this one's going to be bigger than this one. But so we're going to still have an inequality as our answer, but we want to simplify it as much as possible. So we're solving for x, but we're solving an inequality. So if you don't quite remember the rules, luckily we're not doing anything super complicated. We're not doing anything that would change the direction of the inequality. So this is what it's going to look like when we set it up. Since this is the bigger angle, we say 4x minus 10 is greater than 40. And then we treat the greater than sign like we would the equal sign. So we say, we add 10 to both sides. So we end up with 4x is greater than 50. And then we divide both sides by 4, and since it's a positive number, we're not changing the direction of the inequality. So we go x is greater than, where's my brain? 12 and a half. So, as long as x was bigger than 12 and a half, this would be true. Now, we would have to know the size of that shared side to be able to give an exact range using our other theorem, but luckily we're not going to have to do that today. So that's it for hinge theorem. And you got how many pages of homework in your packet? Got two pages of homework in your packet, and you've got your review tomorrow and your test on Thursday the 30th. So make sure that your packets are all done by then, homework and notes, because they're due on the 30th. And be sure to email me if you have any questions, and to stop by before or after school if you need any help. All right, and I'll see you next time.